All right, so hopefully this will last. So my name is Will.
Hi, Will.
I am a chiptune producer. I'm not really. I'm kind of a hobbyist chiptuner dude, and whenever I try and introduce people to trackers, they look at it and they go, "What do I do here?" And it's very intimidating. And so this is going to be how to use trackers. So what is chiptune? It's like video game music, but it's not like Journey video game music. It's like Mario video game music that you'd hear out of your antiques. So this is kind of what you'd expect to make a game soundtrack of some AAA title today, you know, Journey or Max Payne or something, you know, whatever. And this is what made the music in 1995. That's actually the PAL version, so it's like a 2A07 chip.
Is that the actual size?
Yeah.
Go on history, no.
Yeah. Thank you, James.
This is
So I went into somebody published the assembly code for the original Super Mario Brothers, and I searched through it trying to find music code. And I think this might be it. This is like one of the songs, kind of, maybe. I don't know. It's like completely indecipherable. So obviously coding chiptune is an issue. It's very difficult to do. I don't recommend it. So in 1978, they actually invented a thing called MML, which is Music Macro Language. And it still looks gibberishy, but you can tell, like, these are notes like A and G, or G sharp, as it may be. Whatever. It's still, this is from a game that I made. I wrote this, and it wasn't fun.
Where did we be able to read that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No. So this is Tracker. This is actually the pattern from a tune made in Milkytracker, and it still might look like total gibberish to you, but by the end of this talk, hopefully it won't. So understanding trackers. We're going to learn about different types of trackers, the way their song files are structured, the way pitch is represented, what's a hexadecimal number and how is that represented, and finally note data. So again, if this is all Latin, don't worry. So we have, there's dozens of trackers out there. Some are chip-based and some are sample-based. Chip-based ones, they can have samples as well, but they're instructing a sound chip to make noise. Whereas sample-based ones all have the sounds built into the instruments that the tracker's actually playing. So we are going to be looking at sample-based ones, specifically Milkytracker, and this is how a file is structured conceptually. So you have a mod file. They call them modules because it sounds cool and like you're a hacker. In the mod file, you have your song data. And the song data is made up of patterns. So you have your pattern data. Your patterns are just different notes, different sequences of notes that reference instruments. And then those instruments themselves, since Milkytracker is a sample-based tracker, are made up of sample data. So that's kind of how it's set up. And here it is. Here's Milkytracker. So like I said, you have your song. And your song in Milkytracker is just this tiny little box. And you can see, you can scroll through it and add and subtract channel patterns. And then you have your pattern, which your pattern editor is this big screen here, and that's where you spend a pretty good amount of your time. The patterns reference the instruments, which are located there. The instruments reference samples, which are there. And then you have your basic controls And for me, when I first started, the controls were the most intimidating part, but they're not too bad. You can kind of make assumptions, play, stop. There's a sample editor and an instrument editor, which we'll look at much later, but just try not to get overwhelmed by all the crazy stuff happening. So pitch. But by way of raising hands, how many people can tell me what that note is?
Without raising hands?
Yes.
E.
Right, okay. So yeah. So we had like two people that could say like, okay, that's an E. So that's it's kind of crappy. So trackers, everybody looks at them and they're like, what is all this information? But when you understand it, it's easy, because how many people can tell me what note this is? Yep. So yeah, it's intimidating at first, but it's very user-friendly once you understand the basics. You put in the notes using your keyboard, but you don't type in E and then 5, because your keyboard is also a musical keyboard. And so if you know piano, you can see the white keys, and then your sharp/flat notes are the black keys. And so it's all on your keyboard, and it's really easy. And now, speaking of pitch, there's monophonic instruments and polyphonic instruments. What that means is a monophonic instrument is an instrument that can play one note at a time. And a polyphonic instrument can play more than one note at a time. So trackers are monophonic, but you have channels, and each channel can make its own sound. But it can only do one note at a time, so that is a limitation. So if you want to do a chord consisting of 3 notes, then you have to use 3 channels, which can kind of be a pain, but there are ways to kind of cheat that we'll go into a little bit later. So hexadecimal is another thing that confuses people, because you see numbers and letters together and your brain just goes, no thank you. But hexadecimal is pretty easy to understand once you see this slide. So decimal, here's 0 through 16 represented in decimal notation, which is what we use, because we have 10 fingers, so why not? Hexadecimal means you have 16 symbols, so 10 is actually A, and 16 is actually 10, so that's kind of confusing, but for the most part, you just think of it like a slider, and what was that movie, the rock and roll movie? You know? No. What's that? No. So the amp goes up to 11. Yeah, Spinal Tap. So the amp doesn't go up to 11; it goes up to B. So it's like, so once you understand it, it's really easy. It just goes 0 through 9, and then it does A through F. So now that you understand that 100%, when you enter in notes, you enter in more than just the note and the duration. Speaking of duration, the duration of the note you enter lasts until the next note in that sequence. You can also tell it to stop playing, so that's just a little pointer. The next note in the sequence, or in that little strip. So does anybody have Milkytracker open? So you see it has 3 digits, and then next to that, just spaced a little bit over, is 1 digit. So the 3 digits are what note it is, if it's sharp, and then what octave it is. The next digit is the instrument that it's playing, the instrument that it's referencing. The next 2 will be volume, and it goes from 0 to 40. And then the next one is the effect you use. So that's probably the best part, like effects, because it lets you do stuff that regular sequencers and music applications don't let you do. So it's a 3-digit string. The first digit is the effect type. The second digit is the first parameter. And the third digit is the second parameter of that effect. So you have all these effects, and I could tell you what each of these does, but that's, why would I? So here's an example of an arpeggio. The effect, the first digit will be 0. That means use the arpeggio effect. That arpeggiates through 3 notes, the first one being the note that you delineated at the beginning of that line. The second digit is the second note in that arpeggiation, and arpeggiation just goes do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, you know. And then the third digit is the third note in that arpeggiation. So this produces kind of a major chord. It only plays one note at a time, but it plays it so fast like a video game that it kind of sounds like a major chord. So that's a way that you can pretend you're having a major chord without using 3 channels, which is pretty cool. Another example is vibrato. So that's kind of like opera singers, you know, the instead of just going because that's boring. So you have vibrato. This is how to make your chiptunes rock. So the first parameter in the vibrato effect is how fast it wobbles. So like if it's a low number, it'll go, and if it's a high number, it's like, wow. That's cool. And the third one is how much it wobbles. Andrew.
So was the 0 specifically arpeggio?
Yes.
And then 4 is always vibrato?
Yes. Well, the 0, I think, it's not really, nobody knows this. It's lost to the annals of history. But I believe that 0 is the effect number because it implies that the first note is...
Right, the root tone.
Yeah. But it's really just saying that this is the arpeggio effect.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this particular vibrato is like a guitar dude wailing on his guitar. So it's really confusing and daunting to be like, okay, so wait, 0 is arpeggio, 4 is vibrato, but it's okay because you can always read the fun manual. And so yeah, just don't worry about it. All these effects are in the manual. All the different keystrokes to do things are in the manual. It seems like you're looking at the manual constantly, but I promise after, like, you know, looking up how to make the pitch slide up or down 2 or 3 times, you'll know that it's 1 or 2 for the effect. So, right now, does anybody have any questions?
We had to download our things like the instruments.
Yeah, and I actually have several in there. I'll go through a little bit of instrument and sample stuff in a little bit.
Yeah, in order to get the instruments, I have to go through the thing.
Yeah, so in that tracker file, I should have some examples.
Great. Where can I get from the Milky thingy site?
They aren't on the Milkytracker site.
Oh,
So you have a USB drive with them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
yeah, I'll
Oh, great.
go do it the old-fashioned way with the USB. I'm not going to.
Well, another cool thing about this is that these mod files are, a lot of people like to listen to the mod files instead of a rendering of it. So instead of saying like, oh, give me an MP3 of that cool chiptune track, you can be like, give me that module, and they'll give you the mod file or the XM file or the FamiTracker file or whatever, and you play it in Milkytracker or any other tracker, and you can see how they made their instruments. You can use their instruments. The scene is generally very open to people stealing everybody's instruments because the scene is really kind of based on software piracy. Like back in the day when people pirated Commodore 64 games, the people that were pirating them wanted to be known as these cool hacker dudes, so they'd make these things called cracktros, which were like the intros to the game or the installation file or whatever. and they would feature this cool chiptune music. And that's still like, I mean, if you've, God forbid, ever stolen like, you know, Photoshop, you might have come across an awesome keygen that plays awesome music and makes you feel like a hacker while you're stealing really expensive software. Yeah. So it's a culture of borrowing and sharing. So
how do you handle drums?
Drums, they're like any other instrument for these sample-based ones. For chip-based ones, it depends on the chip itself. But for instance, the Nintendo Sound chip has 5 channels. It has 2 pulse wave channels, which are the doot. It has 1 triangle channel, which is like the and that's usually bass because it's all smooth. So you can be like boo instead of boom because it's disruptive. And then it has a noise channel and a sample channel that can play like, I think like 4-bit samples. So that's why all the like the drums on NES are either like which might be like a noise with an envelope to give it that attack, or it could be a sample. But yeah, so sample-based ones, you can just throw a drum sample in there. For like a piano, though, you might just grab a bit of a piano thing and then loop it. But we'll go through some of that later.
2 questions. What are the instruments used for the 8-bit Konami games for the NES?
Yeah, so like different musicians have their styles, and like for instance, like Mega Man, it often has that like tom sound that goes doo 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 doo, and that's actually one of the synthesizer channels that is used for like melodies usually, but they were pretty infamous for using that. But Konami drums are usually samples, so.
What's the sound, drum stuff look sound like?
It sounds like real drums, but like on AM radio, kind of. It's like way downsampled. It's like awful quality, but
I'm used to the music and like something sound like Contra.
yeah. So it's all cool and lo-fi.
I'm thinking about once I get used to it, I'm thinking about like writing most of the DDR songs for this type of 8-bit Konami song sound.
Yeah, that's a popular thing to do, actually. I know a lot of people
And he says it.
will do that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Since they're both Konami. Because one of what sounds like most of the money songs sound like 8-bit, but Konami style 8-bit. Also, how do I get to that tracker again?
It's still on the file sharing thing.
Yeah, with the RVA game jam thing, it's
Is there a URL here from?
No, you have to connect to the network.
I am. It's just
Sometimes
like
it takes it a moment to boot up, though.
Yeah.
Like, give it like 2 minutes first, because I had to sit and force around for a bit first before it popped.
Yeah. So here's Milkytracker.
The thing is, I set my homepage to IXQuick, but how do I?
Just press any website now.
Yeah, if you can't connect to a website, then it hasn't fully really connected yet.
Like CNN.com, you should redirect you to it.
Yeah, it should just redirect you from anything, and if it doesn't, it's just setting up. So
tracker pack and
yeah, and that contains lots of trackers, but especially Milkytracker. But it also has like some examples and stuff.
So there's a load instrument. What is that?
Okay, so let's see. Let me see if I actually have. So on that file, I have a. In there, there's a NES template, and I'm just using a Game Boy one because I have it available right now. But so in that NES template, if you open that in Milkytracker, there's already plenty of instruments with samples set up. Because that's another big hurdle I feel like for people trying to get into trackers is when you open it up, there's no sound to be made, and you actually have to load samples, and it's a pretty complicated process. But like I said, you can open up somebody else's, and then if you like you can go through and say like, all right, well, let's see what this sounds like. Okay. XI, I believe. So if you go through and you say like, okay, I like that, I'm going to go ahead and save it, then you can save that wherever you'd like and then load it into your own and use that same thing. So okay, so we have the song up here where it just says 0 because it only has one pattern. We have instruments, samples, and this pattern editor. So just to kind of give you an overview of what's going on, if you click on Sample Editor, SimpEd, it'll show you the current sample. If you do not have a sample selected, then it will show just a blank line. But if you go to an instrument, you'll have access to the samples in that instrument. You can see like, yeah. But yeah, so if I play that at like a low key, you can actually see it cycling through that sample. But say you have drums, they're kind of bigger samples, so you can see like, let's see, I don't know. Set up, but so
wait, is there a way to install this?
Milkytracker doesn't need to be installed. You can
Because
just
I'm going to get lots and lots of unorganized folders if I uninstall everything.
You should.
Yeah, you don't have to
It
install
says
everything.
Milkytracker on it, and you just click it. And
Yeah,
it
it says
opens.
Milky.
I just have it set up so that if you have Windows, you click on Windows, and
Okay,
then
lost.
there's the different trackers.
Well, let me reinstall this again because I'm trying to install every single one of these.
No, you don't need to install everything. Quick question, Izzy.
Yeah.
I know where to get the thing from when I get home, but where do I find like the samples, the instruments, and samples files from there?
I will post it on the Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook and sign up for the RVA Game Jams group, then you'll see it. I'll post it later tonight, like probably midnight-ish.
Yeah, I'm not sure the demo session.
Yeah, maybe a little bit later. We go to karaoke after this. We go to karaoke after this, and that lasts late into the evening. For me, I'm a professor.
I thought it was the only other files we had to mess with.
Okay.
Or in another file that says songs.
So I open the songs folder.
There's a songs folder, and then at the top of that structure, I also have example tunes as well. So, all right. So we have instruments, we have samples, and then we have this pattern editor. So at the moment, when I play notes, nothing happens as far as the pattern editor. You can audition the sounds, find the pitch you want, and then when you're ready to input notes, you press the space bar and you can input notes. So maybe we'll just so that's how you input notes. If you want to press, you can press the play button at the top, but you can also use the enter key. There's all kinds of keyboard shortcuts, and reading through the manual will really help you. But yeah, so when you have notes in, then you can also add the effects. So I'll make this first pitch kind of vibrato a little bit. I'll have it starting off not vibrato too much and then ramp it up a little bit. The effect 3 is slide to pitch, so that would be like you're playing a note like boop, and then you want to play another note boop, but you don't want it to just go boop, boop, you want it to go boop, then that's what sliding to note is. So we'll try that. Let's see. So it's just, once you understand kind of what the effects do, you can be really creative with writing things like melodies, whereas, you know, like in traditional things like FL Studio or Ableton or Logic or whatever people like to use, you're just kind of plopping notes down and there's not too many tools for sliding around and doing crazy arpeggios and doing stuff.
What did you use to input the effect notes?
They are inputted to whatever their note is. So like 4 would be 4. You just have to cursor over to that column
Okay.
and then input them in by hand.
You could do like a voice sample, or you just have to do like 4-bit?
No, yeah, you can do whatever you want. So like, I'll add a new instrument. I'll show you, I'll find something to load up. Let's see.
Is there like a size limit, or is it just whatever?
I don't think there's a size limit. I've never tried to load anything really huge, but yeah, you can load WAV files. I think WAV files is what it wants. So let me see. Let me try and find something kind of interesting. Let's see what this sound is. So yeah, when you import a stereo signal sample, it'll ask you if you want the left channel or the right channel, or you can mix them, which is usually what you want. So yeah, let's see what that is. Let's see. So that's pretty weird. So you can load it from whatever, like, this is just a WAV file I have on my computer.
Okay, so any wave file.
Yeah. And then so like this, if you see here,
Like if you're working on your own stuff, could you use headphones?
Oh, sorry. Because this sounds like Donkey Kong.
so like down here in this sample editor, you have your looping options, which is kind of important. So right now if I play it, it loops through and just keeps going. I can have it do a ping pong loop, which goes from one side, and that generally produces a smoother sound, but maybe not what you want. So I'm going to try and move the loop points so I can get a specific sound. So I'm going to move this one over here and this one here. So you can get really weird sounds out of crazy samples. So this little section here kind of looks like it's waveforms. So if I go there, I forgot how to zoom in, but there's some way to zoom in. Maybe it's just. But yeah, there's so. Do what?
Isn't there a friendly manual for just it?
Yeah, there is, but.
You can zoom under config. I had to do that.
Oh yeah, you can zoom the whole thing up. So yeah, all these buttons, a lot of them are abbreviated and weird. So zap, what zap does is it erases everything. So if you press zap, under the instruments, I think it just totally deletes it. Oh no, it actually does have a prompt. So zapping means delete. So if you wanted to, you could open up anybody's mod file and you're like, man, I really love all these instruments, but I don't feel like going through and deleting every note. You can zap just the song and pattern data by saying song, and that'll leave you with a blank canvas to use their instruments. and that's pretty handy. And then you have load, which is load your song, save and save as. Disk op is disk operations, and you can load different files and save them as different formats. For instance, if you want to export your song to a WAV file, so if you want to show your mom, because your mom's not going to have Milkytracker, you would choose WAV and save as. Yeah, I do.
Wait.
So then you have your sample editor, where you can go in and do different functions to the sample. The instrument editor, that's pretty fun because, so I have this. That's okay sounding. It sounds Game Boyish, but maybe I want it to sound more interesting. So I'll add an envelope. Envelopes basically ramp the volume up or down, however you want, and it's kind of how you get different things. Like a piano, if you have a long sustain on your piano, the envelope would kind of look like that. Like the initial punch is going to be pretty punchy, but the sustain will keep going for a while. If you have like a really low sustain on your piano, so it just goes ding instead of ding, then the envelope will look like this. I'm sorry, you guys are on the other side, so it'll look like this. So we'll make that by turning the envelope on with the on button under the instrument editor. And then we have these points to mess around with, so so that's a little bit more pleasant, you know. You can do crazy stuff though too. You can add points to the envelope and then move all those points around however you'd like. So I don't know, maybe we'll make something that does something weird. So it's a kind of interesting way to go about getting like fake reverb. So, you know, you could kind of
Would this be a better way to control the vibrato, or?
No, because with the effects you can do all kinds of stuff. With this, once you set it, it's kind of set.
Okay.
I mean, you can always go back and change it, but like one of the examples in that folder is a tune by Zabu Tom. I think it's Snow Mecha Takeoff, and it has this really cool like hi-hat channel where it's going and it's really cool. And I was looking at it, I was like, man, yeah, I need to steal that hi-hat sample. So I go in, and it's just a noise just going and he's actually gone through with the effect channel and the volume column and set all of those hi-hat things, and it's pretty easy to do like a bunch at a time and stuff, but he set all of those hi-hat envelopes manually using the effect column, which is really cool, and it means that he only needs one sample for a bunch of different hi-hat sounds.
So can you copy and paste notes, or is that every time?
Yeah, you can copy and paste by like, so if I have that, and then an effect or something, you just highlight it with the mouse, and then unfortunately Control C and V aren't standard in this program, so you just right click and say copy, and then go to where you want it and paste, and then, you know, if you wanted 4 of them, you could paste it a couple more times, or just copy that chunk and paste that.
Do you prefer Milkytracker over the others, or just because that is sensitive?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I really like Milkytracker is it's available on like everything. I think it was actually made originally for like Windows Palm Pilot kind of thing. Windows, I don't know, what was it called, like Palm OS or something. But yeah, it's on Android. It's probably on iOS. I don't know, but you know, like you can get it on, you know, your dog's collar, basically. I mean, it's just like really ubiquitous. It's based on a tracker called Fast Tracker 2, which was kind of the ubiquitous tracker for a while. There are plenty of other trackers, though. Mod Plug Tracker is a really popular one. And these are sample-based trackers. If you want to make Nintendo sounds, FamiTracker is the way to go, but it's Windows only. There's another tracker called Deaflmask, which is confusing even to me, because it emulates a bunch of different chips like Nintendo. It has Genesis and YM, whatever the arcade chips are, and it's pretty dense, but it's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. But yeah, Milkytracker is just kind of it's not so simple that it's easy to understand, but it's simpler than a lot of other programs, and it's just my weapon of choice, basically.
So I'm guessing you can plug in like a USB keyboard into this and play with it, or no?
I think you can. Yeah, I haven't done it, but I seem to remember you can doing it. It's probably under config somewhere. Yeah, I can't remember, but I know FamiTracker allows MIDI input because I've done that, but I haven't personally done it for this. But I would imagine it does have that functionality.
I can't open the Famicom songs.
Yeah, so another reason that Milkytracker is nice is because it opens XM, IT, which is impulse tracker files, mod files, .mod, but it will not open FamiTracker specific files because the instruments that those FamiTracker files are referencing are specific to the Nintendo chip, and Milkytracker doesn't emulate anything like that.
So any way to play them?
Yes, FamiTracker is included in that pack.
Oh, Spanish. I've used Famictracker.
Yeah. So, does anybody, this is a lot to take in, but these programs are pretty fun to explore, and they're, you know, if you're making a masterpiece and you're totally lost, then feel free to save it and open something else. But if you're just like digging around, then don't be afraid to zap stuff or like go into the configuration and mess with it. I mean, if you screw something up horribly, you can always just download Milkytracker again, or just
Can you unzap something?
no. Once something is zapped, it's zapped. Load.
No, how do you make them do file?
Make a new file?
Is it zap?
Yeah.
Well, that means it deletes everything.
Yeah. Which would
will it mean it deletes the song from the file, or it's just erased?
just from the current open thing. So it
Oh,
won't.
no, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. It won't actually delete the saved file on your computer, but it will delete all the information loaded in the program. So, is anybody like still totally lost, like 100% lost?
I couldn't figure that thing out at all.
Milkytracker or?
Yeah, me too.
Like at all. I couldn't make it make any noises except for the pattern editor. I just loaded another one of the trackers and from the packages. It's pretty dope. I'm trying to out.
Which one?
It's
I have some
Sunbox.
Oh, okay.
The interface is pretty split from that.
Yeah, Sunvox is very modern. There's like an older tracker called Buzz that kind of did some crazy stuff with like modular synthesis stuff, and Sunvox is kind of like a successor to Buzz. But yeah, that's the thing with these trackers is when you open up a new file, if you don't load a sample or a pre-made instrument, then there's no way to get sound.
Okay, so you recommend opening a sample file and
Yeah.
deleting all the trackers.
Yeah, in that first folder, there's like an examples folder, and I have several things in there. I have a NES NXM.xm, I think, and that has a bunch of Nintendo samples. I have a Genesis one that has a few Genesis samples. It's not really, it's very hard to do Genesis stuff in XM because it's kind of a weird it's hard to make instruments in these that are very like dynamic as far as the timbre of the instrument goes. Like if it kind of like phases in and out, it's difficult because it's hard to get those to loop. But you can do things like with this volume envelope to kind of make it more interesting and more crazy. But yeah, so do you guys understand kind of what this pattern editor is and how you input notes? Is that pretty clear? So all right, so I'm going to subtract one and I'm going to zap the song data and I'm going to get rid of the... So, okay. So I have two channels here, and in these channels... Yeah. So in these channels, you have several columns. You have the first column, you have this second column, a third column, a fourth column, and a fourth column. So this first column is pitch. So when you're in this first column, when you input a note, you can see it's C5, and it's defaulted to using instrument 1 because I have instrument 1 selected up here. To select a different instrument, you just click on it, and then you have it selected. So if I wanted to input something from instrument 3, I just have instrument 3 selected, and I input a note. This third column is volume, and volume goes from 0 to 40. If you try and go higher than that, it won't let you. So, like if you try and say F because of that hexadecimal stuff, it'll just not let you. So you have to go up to 40. But you can do 3F. But yeah, so 40 is the highest you can go there, and then the last column is that effects stuff. So, like, one kind of wonky thing is if you try and do that arpeggio thing, if you press 0 for this first effect slot, it doesn't look like it's doing anything, but it's just because 0 is the default. So if you put a 3 there, it'll put a 0 there for you. So, I mean, it's hard to look at if you don't know what's going on, but once you understand what's going on, it's still a lot of information to take in, but it's all there, and it's all very accessible compared to other programs.
How did you set the keyboard from?
Are you in Milkytracker? So see that red line on mine? Does yours look like that or like that?
Yeah, red.
So if you press space, you go from audition mode to record mode, and then you can input notes in there using your keyboard.
Okay. How does it pick like which one of the columns is going to write stuff?
Wherever your cursor is.
Wherever your cursor.
So you can use the arrow keys, or you can like double click.
Can you do the columns, do those map to samples or instruments?
The way it maps to the instrument is just this second column.
Second column.
Yeah, and so so you have this three-digit first column that is note. So
Oh no, I meant like the number. You have two, like A and B, or whatever. Like the 1 and 2. I can't read it.
right.
Those
Oh,
are tracks.
those are channels. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So another confusing thing is like I can say, okay, I want this to be C5, and it'll do that. But then I can choose a different channel or a different instrument, and then put a different instrument in the same channel, which a lot of programs won't let you do.
How do you like clear these tracks?
To make it just blank.
I mean, if you loaded a preset song.
Yeah. Then you would go up to this that says Zap, and you click Zap, and then you can say song. If you do all, it'll get rid of their instruments and samples and everything.
Okay.
But if you do song, yeah. So basically now, if you can get sound working and kind of navigate picking different instruments and samples, then it's really just a matter of you getting used to the interface and making awesome tunes, basically. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, we have plenty of time.
Where do we download all the instruments?
They're kind of hard to find, but so if you listen to a song and you're like, man, I really like that snare, then if you can find a mod file of that song or a .xm file of that song, you can open it in Milkytracker and say like, oh, that instrument's really nice. I love that instrument. You just save it and you can create your own library of instruments. There are a few places online where you can download instruments, but this is a pretty like archaic like format. So you know, once GeoCities died, man, where's all this info gonna go? Because there's not a lot of people on the internet that are just like itching for these XI files. And a lot of the people that make this music have been doing it for so long that they either have their own library or, they'll just open up a song they made a while ago and rip it from there, or open up something somebody else made, rip it from there. So it's a weird scene filled with weird people.
As for getting, I know you express space to put the note in, but how do you get the effects and volume modifiers if you're on the line that's missing
You can cursor over. So alright, so this cursor is this like red line and then this blue thing within that red line. So if I wanted to so let's put a note down. Say I didn't want it on to be that first instrument. I could select another instrument and press C5 again, or I could just say like, oh, I want it to be instrument 3. And then you can cursor over with your arrow keys or double clicking with your mouse to the next column and just input it by hand. The only thing that's like, if I want to put in a C note here, then I have to use this like virtual keyboard, like virtual musical keyboard, instead of like typing the letter C and the number 5. I just press C5 there. So
it's basically like get used to touch typing on the musical keyboard.
yeah,
Okay.
and then otherwise everything else you input is just whatever it is. So if the effect I want to use is B, then I press B, and then 9 would be 9. So yeah, it's pretty. It looks like a jumble of mess, but in the end, you can look at it and say, okay, that's a C. It's referencing this instrument. It's that volume, and it's using this effect like super quick.
Come
Come
in.
in.
Oh.
We're going.
Hey, come on in. Hey, how's it going? So, and also, are you on Facebook? Are you online? Okay. All right. I'll give you my information later, and I'll get you caught up on private lesson kind of thing. But yeah, so yeah, it's when you're presented with something that has like a lot of crazy notation and stuff, it's like really daunting and obnoxious and not fun, and like a lot of people will see something like that and just be like, oh, I'm done, I don't want to do it. But like it's really pretty, even to me, like if I'm looking at a giant chunk of this, I'm still just like, nah, not interested. But like I'll just and then you can go up and say like, all right, well, let's mute all these channels except for one. To mute them, do you guys have these things on yours? I know sometimes the configuration doesn't have them. Yeah, there's like some special key to get them up. But I think you can, yeah. So you can click on the top of the channels to do stuff like solo them or mute them, just at the top of the pattern editor. But you can also, if you have these like preview panes, you can just like single click them to mute them. So yeah, so I'm like, alright, so that's the drums. Easy. I really like that bass instrument. So I'll go and I'll see, okay, it's using F. So I'll just go over here to the instruments and I go to F. And so, yes, yeah. So now that I'm on triangle, like, you can see that, and you can go, okay, well, that's a very simple instrument. So it's really easy to dig into something that you like to find out what people are doing. So you can go to that and say, okay, like it's effect 0. See my cursor? It's effect 0, and this is going up 3 notes and 7 notes. So that's how you got that. Which bar?
Below like G5.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's note off. That's telling it to stop playing, yeah. And there's, it depends on the setup. I don't remember what I have it set up here. I think it's usually tilde, but I'm not totally sure.
I can hit the tilde or the 1.
Yeah. So it just depends on how it's set up, which I think would probably be in config somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, that was weird. I remember having to do that and just being like, that's strange. Here, I can't remember. It might be just set in this to be something. I can't really recall. 'Cause that's another thing. When you switch between trackers, there's a lot that's in common. Like, if you're messing with XM files, all these effects will always be the same. But in FamiTracker, they might be a little bit different. There might be different effects on different slots or something weird. And it really just depends on how they code it. XM is like a really popular format, so all trackers that do XM all act that certain way. But yeah. So like that's a weird thing that I did. Like it's like somebody is like taking a guitar and using like a whammy bar. So you see these two effects, 2 and 1. 2 means ramp the pitch down, and then 1 ramps up. So I have them both with the same setting. So it just ramps down and then ramps it up by the same amount. So it sounds. And then the 3 is sliding to that pitch. So, like if I was using like run-of-the-mill music production software, there's really not keyboard and do like, you know, mod wheel stuff and pitch bend stuff. But if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, you're kind of screwed. And like you can kind of do it with automation and stuff, but it's not fun. Like I mean, it'll take like probably like 5 or 6 mouse clicks to do a simple pitch bend in normal software. Whereas here I just say 2 and then 6, and you know you might have to fine tune it, but you're done. So it's fast to work with once you get a hang of it. It's fun to work with. It's kind of a you can do really advanced stuff with it, but it's also kind of I think it lends itself well to kind of hobbyist stuff, because you have a certain amount of channels and you can load these certain amount of instruments, so it's not like super complicated and super complex, and you don't have to like, you know, you don't have to be Hans Zimmer to make music. You can like load in fun samples and just like make goofy melodies and make goofy drum tracks, and a lot of the time it'll sound really cool. So, do you guys kind of understand how the pattern editor works now? Like, yeah.
With some of the samples too, like there'll be like I guess the rest of music will turn to like stanzas where it's like that song 1010203 and the song thing. How do you
Right.
get to connect?
Up here?
It's like, yeah, because I added one to a sample and it doesn't continue on to the next one.
So the song stuff, you can insert. It's kind of confusing because you have patterns and then you have song order. So here they just happen to match up. 0 is 0, 1 is 1, and 2 is 2. But like I could say, I think with these two buttons here, you can determine which one to go to next. And so this song control is maybe one of the more confusing parts for me personally. But you can say I wanted to add a new pattern to the song. If I go to the end of the song and then press SEQ, it adds the next one in the sequence. If I wanted to have a pattern that might have like everything's the same except for like a little drum fill at the end, you could press CLN and that clones it to the next available one, and then you just go through and edit what you want. But yeah, does that kind of answer?
Yeah, well, like I made a new one. Maybe because I hadn't told it that it was the next one. Maybe that's why it wasn't.
Yeah, and you can like, so did you just up the length, like here? Because you can say like.
I think I hit the sequence just to see what it did.
Okay.
And it seemed to add another one.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's it. And then I tried like replaying it, like just stopped at the first set. So I was like, oh, weird. But maybe because I hadn't told it like sequence one, maybe that's why it was.
And it also, did it like plain stop?
Yeah.
Do you have any effects at the end of it? Because there are effects to stop playback. Like the F effect will change the tempo of your song, but if you press F00, it changes the tempo to 0 and
that's
stop.
What's at the end of this sample.
Yeah.
So if I just mix that.
Yep. Then it'll. Yeah, it's real crazy stuff. It's very confusing at first, but I promise you, like, I was really hesitant. I always wanted to make chiptune music, and like I downloaded like all these different trackers and stuff, and I downloaded one that was really difficult to learn, which probably screwed me over in the long run. But like, there was no mouse control or anything. Everything was like hotkey, like function keys, and it was like really old school. It was for the Game Boy, and or it emulated the Game Boy, and like when I first started learning, I just kept having all these moments where I was like, I'll just never know this. And then there was like a moment where I was like, I'll just know this. And then like as soon as that, like, I didn't know much, but as soon as I had the attitude that like, I'll just know how to do this, then like, okay, well I know how to input notes now. Oh, okay, well like, what are these other columns doing? Oh, okay, screwing around with it, I figured out that that's volume, that's effects, stuff like that. And then like, kind of like once you get in that mindset of like this isn't hard, then it really becomes easy. Like it's strange. There's like few times, like programming was like that for me, where I was like, I would just stare at it and be like, why is there a semicolon there? I quit. Like, and I still don't know why I have to put a semicolon. I mean, like I know you have to do it to end a line, but why? It's like this existential dread. But like once you just accept that there's a semicolon there, then you can move on, and it's like super easy. It's not super easy, but it's a lot more friendly when you're not freaking out about everything. So yeah, yeah. So I mean, we're not out of the woods yet, but
So where it runs out of like time.
Right.
Like, a longer song than the 0 0 to 3F goes to.
Yeah. So if you want to add more, there's two things you can do. You can add another pattern in the song up here in the corner and say, I'll add a new pattern in the sequence, and it'll just add it for you, and then select that pattern as well. Or you could say, like, well, you know, like, what if I have like a weird time signature or something? You can add length to the pattern that you're on. So like, I'll go to the end here, and I'll say, let's add length, and it just adds more rows to your song. So another few things to check out. You can change this in the configuration. Like I said, if you have like a different time signature, you can change it. But every 4 rows, there's a yellow number. So that's basically like your beat. You know, like if I were to go to these drums. I guess that's a good enough instrument. So if I was to go there and just add in, you can kind of see, and that's a good way to a little trick I did there was up here where it says add. That add means how many rows to leap forward after you input a note. So a little trick to trade.
So if you know, like with drums, you don't have a constant tempo. You can just tell it like on every 4th
Yep.
line instead of having to sit there like.
Yeah. Instead of like, because you get really good at being like, and that's like boring and obnoxious. So yeah. So if you know that you're gonna have like, so I have this like crappy drum beat. If I can find where I should have a snare somewhere. Yeah, so there's no snare. So if I want a snare on every other row, I'd put add to 2. So yeah, it's the tricky stuff is all advanced stuff. So you can kind of get along pretty well without knowing a lot, but you know, as long as you keep trying to figure out what does what, you'll just keep learning awesome new tricks that will make you way cooler. Any other questions?
Yeah, how do you make food?
So, first, what you do is you find like a video game that nobody knows about that has really good music, and then you copy that music.
Or you can move to the Himalayas with your laptop and for about 10, 20 years just sit in front of the laptop meditating your own
And then you just return as a guru. Yeah.
slowly go mad.
And then whatever, like, the chiptune title.
Yeah.
What would be after that? You say, fuck it, I'm gonna find a public domain MP3.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Like, bad MIDI defaults.
I think that fad's already come and gone.
When I think chiptunes, I thought convert any MP3 into like this, but I didn't know you have to keep finding the notes.
Yeah. There's no
simple way.
there's no conversion thing.
How people do all these chiptune stuff. I thought they just found the MP3 and somehow converted 8-bit.
You just get really good at, like I said, this is a really fast way to work. I'm kind of out of practice, but like, you know, like if I have like a melody in mind, if I'm having like a little bit of trouble with it, I will just like add this drum beat, and I'll be like, all right, it doesn't need to be that fast. So like, let me slow it down. Oh yeah, forgot that I got all this stuff. Yeah,
And then it just happens.
and then it just, then you draw the rest of the album.
It's
Yeah.
like, how did it read my mind?
That's a good question. And so earlier we talked about like hexadecimal numbers, which is so like right now we count in decimal notation, which is 10. You know, once you get to 10, we don't have a symbol for 10. We just use the symbol 1 and the symbol 0. Hexadecimal is like counting with 16 fingers. So the value 10 gets represented by the letter A. So like so here if I go to 9, the next number in the sequence won't be 10, it will be A. And then I can do B, C, D, E, and F. And then after F comes 16, which is represented by 10. So that's kind of confusing. But, so like what we have up here is we can have the length go up to FF, which is 127. So it can be, you can make a song in these that is 127 patterns long. And we're there. And then,
You can change the tempo and stuff.
yeah, and so like,
Slurpee.
yeah, and you can also change the length. I don't know how far you can make it. Let's see. But yeah, you can make pretty long. I mean, like,
Longer than
it's
you
set
think.
up so that you don't have to worry about it, really. You can make it very long, very, very long.
Say I wanted to drive myself insane and have like 20 instruments.
Uh-huh.
How would I go about adding the columns of the 20 instruments?
Okay, so,
Each column is one instrument, but there are only 8 columns here, and I want to.
right. Well, so if you wanted 20 instruments, but only 4 of them playing at the same time, you can just load in 20 instruments. If you wanted 20 playing at the same time, which is very difficult to do, a lot of Nintendo composers will compose with the 5 channels on the Nintendo. Konami did have like an expansion pack for the sound chip that adds like, I think just two more, maybe 4. I can't remember because I never use it.
I'm just like saying, how would you add more columns
Yeah.
to add more instruments?
Yeah.
I remember Castlevania reading in Japanese versus a lot
Yeah,
different than
there's-
the US version.
Yeah, there's more channels. So before I tell you how, I will preface it by saying a lot of composers will be like, "Oh, cool, more channels," and then what they end up making sounds bad because they have too much going on.
Yeah.
But if you want too much, that's what this add and sub and these controls are for. So you can add channels. I think you can only have 32, but your 20 is okay.
Same with the Family Tracker?
No, with FamiTracker you can only have 5, or you can use the expansion and have 2 more, I think. I think there's several expansions that might use different numbers.
Groups of 2, though. That's
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah, that's weird. But yeah, if you're not using one, you can subtract it. But if you have like a lone one that's not being used, you don't have to worry about it.
But, yeah, the only question is down the gaming instruments.
Uh-huh.
Because you don't know when you can get the instrument and get someone else's file and then mod it.
Yep.
That's all we can do.
I've seen packs out there, so if you search Google for XI files, you might be able to find a pack, but they're pretty uncommon.
No, I think I'm starting to understand this. But, okay, so you can load as many instruments as you want, but you can only use, well, a Family Tracker, you can only use 5 of them, right?
Right. Well, you can only use 5 at once. So
Alright.
with FamiTracker, it's different because the first 2 channels are always going to be those pulse wave channels, which sound like this. That's pretty.
And then, wait, 3, 4, 5, put drums, cymbals, and
Yeah, the 3rd channel will sound like this, which sounds similar, but you can tell it's a little bit softer than like. The 4th channel is noise, and then the 5th channel is like samples, which could be drums. They could be little like yow, like they could be anything. It's very rare. There's a few Nintendo like chiptunes that use the sample channel for like a bass line or something, but it's usually used for drums. because drums are simple and short and don't take up a lot of space. But yeah, so a couple of advantages to this is that you can do interesting looping. You know, you can have an intro and then you can have your main song, but like if you're in the game, you don't want the song to just end. You want it to loop, but you don't want it to play the intro again. So you can tell it to loop and go back to a certain order in the song. Like, I want it to go back to 8. If I want it to play. So like, this is where I started screwing around. I don't want that in there. So at the end of this, I will use the effect B, which tells it to go to a certain pattern in the song. So I'll just make it go to, let's try 2. So you can do cool looping stuff that you can't really do, you know, with MP3s. And you can also, the file size is pretty small. So I know that Unity can load XMs. The looping is all screwed up in Unity because they don't care about cool technology. But there are a lot of like different frameworks. Like you can load these kind of files into JavaScript games or Flash games, hacks games. So if you have like a few songs in your game and the MP3s of the songs are like 3 megs each, that's 12 megabytes. You know, if you have 4 songs, it's 12 megabytes if they're 3 megs a piece, which like sounds pretty insubstantial. Like nowadays you have enormous hard drives, but like if somebody's downloading it, you know, like if they see like just a really kind of like really simple looking pixel art game, and then they're downloading like 40 megs, they're like, oh, that's weird. Like, but you know, if you use these files, you can get these file sizes to, you know, like less than 100K. So you can have 10 songs taking up 1 megabyte, and it's very nice. I don't know why that's important to me, but that's really important to me. On the the Nintendo example that I have in that examples folder, the NES and XM, those samples are all based on this dude named Vert, Jake Kaufman, who makes, yeah, and he's done like really Nintendo-ish chiptune stuff, but he's used Milkytracker a lot, but he specifically used a sample-based tracker like Milkytracker. I don't know if it was Milkytracker, but and made Nintendo-sounding chiptunes. So I took that and I took the samples and I kind of simplified what I could. And you know, the original file was 700 kilobytes, and I got it down to 100 kilobytes, which is like really nice, and it still sounds pretty good. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. You can load multiple samples into one instrument, and then in the instrument editor, tell it where to play those samples. So that's what this keyboard down here is for. I can say, I want this open hat sample to play on that note only, and it will do that. But yeah, like I said, I mean, the best thing you can do is just play with this for a couple of days. Like, if you play with this for the weekend, like just a few hours, then you'll get a pretty good understanding of how these work. And
How do you delete a whole like column of stuff?
I think there might be something here. Well, you can select if you want to delete the whole column. I think there's actually a keyboard shortcut, but you can highlight it all and then cut it. You can also zap the pattern, but that'll get rid of all the other columns too. But yeah. So, is everybody gonna make cool chiptunes now? And
Treat if we do.
yeah,
Gold stuff.
chiptunes.
Fucking awesome.
Yeah.
They're rewards. It's so much fun.
And you know, I'm on Facebook, Google Plus, Twitter, Tumblr, every other site on the internet. So,
Zeus? Just kidding.
oh yeah,
Friendster?
it's the #1 dating website according to Facebook, I guess.
Plenty offish?
Are you on Pinterest?
No, no, I'm a dude. I'm a man.
Those are girls.
Yeah, Pinterest is for girls.
Just
But-
kidding, it's for everyone. It's for everyone.
It's not for me, but it is for everyone.
Now, how do you get a single instrument to carry for the entire thing? Like just hold that instrument through the entire column or for a section of column?
If the instrument continues to go, like, let's see. So, this instrument, what I have it doing is if you hold it down, it'll just keep doing it, and then when you let go, it ramps out. So if I were to go to one of these millions of channels, and go over here. So,
How do you get all that stuff from the bottom to top of it?
sample editor and instrument editor. So if I put them, if you just have to put it, it'll just keep going.
Can I talk to dolphins?
Yeah, you can try.
So how does the sustain thing work again?
The sustain, you
Or
could,
it's like the one that kind of like wraps between the notes or something.
oh, so do you want it to like sweep to the next note?
Yeah, I guess.
You would put in, so you have two notes. Let's see. You'll use the effect 3, and then the two parameters are just one number. So you can. Sometimes you have like in the example slides, it's XY. Sometimes it's XX. So it's just one parameter, but you can use 2 digits for it. So this is how fast it amps up. So if I do like 1, it's not done ramping up by the time that effect is done. So it's like,
So it pulls from the note above it?
yeah,
Okay.
the previous note, yeah. So, or you could, yeah. And then, yeah, you can do really dumb stuff.
You could do someone kind of like talking.
Yeah, kinda.
I think I pulled it in.
Is that a way you can like there's like one section like playing this only one song, and then there's another section playing the same song but in a different pitch?
Yeah. So like, I could even just like, go ahead. Oh, this will sound so bad. Just because I have all these dumb effects on it, but so I have these copied and pasted, and so I can say like, okay, so we have an E. Let's make it a G, so it's like a little, it's like a. No, let's make it a. And then we have an A, so let's make that A. Let's see, it'd be good. So yeah, so that would be an example of making a chord that way. But let's need to. So I have that chord, but I could say, let's play our arpeggio that plays 5 notes up from E, which is A. So I had E and A on one channel, but now I just have E. In the arpeggio, it's saying play E, which is 0. You probably can't see it, but there's 0, 5, 0 in that column. The first 0 means play that first note. The 5 means play 5 notes up, which is A. And then the third is 0 again, so it'll just play E, E, A, E really fast. So, and that's kind of like if you don't want to waste the channel, then you can kind of have a chord sound going on.
Is there a wave modulation code?
No. Well, there's sort of. So, let me see. I should actually grab that thing. Let me see if I'm connected. Yeah. All right. So here I am gonna download it. So, you said wave modulation?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, so that's that what that does is you go through several different waveforms. On the Nintendo, it's duty cycles, which means so okay. So let's. I'll show you. I'll show you duty. All right, this isn't moving because there's a cable. I'm too lazy.
Yep.
I'll just draw it twice. So here's like a Nintendo pulse wave, and that sounds like that. Can everybody see either one?
It's like what's on the back of your laptop.
Yeah. So that's a pulse wave. Nintendo has two. The Nintendo has two pulse channels, but they're modular. They're what's called pulse wave modular PWM waves. So what that means is you can move these rectangles around, and so that, or as this side of the room knows it, this, it's kind of like a different timbre, so it kind of sounds like where this one might be like boo, this one's like bang, and wave modulation for the Nintendo, it can mean a lot of different things, but for the Nintendo, wave modulation means going between these different states. So it'll kind of like, I actually have it loaded up. I didn't need to do any of that. But, yeah, I'm an idiot, right? So, here I have, so this is kind of like funky. It just gives it a little bit of flavor. But you can kind of see these square waves. They're not totally square. So that's 50% pulse wave. 25% brings it down. That's like half of what that was. So this one will sound like, and then this one sounds like, and then you can go even further. And then wave modulation goes between them. So to do that, you would actually have to have a sample of it. So I have a sample where it goes, you can kind of see it has, between these 2 points, it kind of has that, and then has the 25, and then has the 12%, and 25, and back to 50, so. But that's kind of the sound you were talking about?
No, I always love that sound. I couldn't figure out what it was called.
Yeah. Yeah, so for FamiTracker, you can actually, I don't think I have FamiTracker on here. I mean, I definitely do now that I downloaded it, but. Right. So, Windows FamiTracker. So in FamiTracker, here's a different thing. So forget everything I just taught you, but keep most of it, but some parts. So in this, to create instruments, you don't need samples because it's emulating the Nintendo sound chip. So to create a sample, you just say new sample, and then you double click on it to edit it. And so here's duty/noise. Because the noise channel also has different ways of generating noise. So the duty is for the pulse wave, the noise is for the noise channel. That's dumb. Okay, so here is something, I think it's like,
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, something weird like that maybe. So Milkytracker, it's really easy to do because it's emulating specifically the Nintendo. But yeah. But yeah, so there's different ways.
Make instruments.
Do I?
That lets you make instruments.
Yeah. So you don't need samples because the Nintendo makes the sound with its chip. But it also has a sample channel to play back samples. So that's confusing. So let's forget about Nintendo for now. Let's say, yeah. So let's look at one of these cool things that I have in this example folder. I just picked a few that I liked. Just drag and drop stuff. So here's that Snow Mecha takeoff thing that I was talking about. So I'll say, no, I don't want to save changes, and now we have this dude's awesome music, and we can play it back, and it's really... single them out and say, all right, well, let's see what's going on this channel just here, just for kicks. So that's like pretty cool. It sounds like there's like some delay going on, so it's like delay is like boop, boop, boop. So it sounds like there's more going on than there is, but if you look at it, he's not using any effects, but he is messing with this volume column a lot. So you see it's 18, 20, 30, so it ramps up, starts kind of quiet, gets louder, and then when he's not playing a note, what he does is he just changes the volume to 10, so that plays it at this higher volume of 30 and then plays it at 10. So instead of repeating the note, it just continues playing the same note, but then that suddenly goes to 10. So it's like this real shift that sounds like delay. So that's a cool trick. Let's see what's going on in this channel. Same kind of stuff. Really cool. What's over here? So E is envelope, and he's using these specific envelopes. If we were to get rid of these, it would probably sound really crappy. So he's using that envelope to make it sound like a cool punchy bass line. And then you can come over here and say, this is what was really impressive to me, because I was like, yeah, these hi-hats, like, it sounds like several different hi-hats going on, you know, like, and then it's like, and it's like cool stuff. So I go and I say, okay, it's using channel 6. Go over to channel 6. It's just this noise thing. I can actually go in the sample editor and I can see it. That's all the hi-hats right there. And he's using some pretty crazy techniques that I'd never seen before. And I've been doing this stuff for a while, where you see these like down arrows. I found out that's by pressing D. And that is telling it to go to ramp the volume down just a little bit. And there's you can't really even tell if I take it out. These weird notes, it still sounds, because he's using these envelopes over here in the effects. So it's just really crazy stuff that he's doing. Those little down things in the volume column was just giving it a little bit more oomph. You know, it's really crazy. And then these are just samples. It's doubling up to it like crazy volume. So, if you look at this column, he's using vibrato a lot, but a lot of the time it's set to nothing. So he probably just went through and said, like, this instrument's just going to have a lot of vibrato, so he just probably went 4 all the way through and then, you know, spotted these little envelopes in after the fact. So that way he could just have easy access and say, like, okay, I want this note to be, like, let's make it really crazy and stupid, like 8. And that's so extreme that you'll be able to tell so yeah, I mean, there's just like really cool stuff. You can go in and just like really take apart and deconstruct. It's really easy to see what people are doing. It's really easy to copy and improve things. I'm really anal retentive about naming my instruments and naming my samples, but a lot of people, like this dude you can see, he's just plopped them in. So you can be really loosey-goosey when you're doing it, and you can be really have to have these certain way. And it's really cool. And so let's see. I think at least one of the other ones was not there. So this one's still pretty chiptune, but it kind of sounds. See what's going on this channel. This is Format Lunar Beach. Alright, that's cool. So, like this dude, for this specific track, he's just using really cool samples together in interesting ways. There's not too much going on. What's interesting about this bass line is that he's using several different instruments to lead. So it gives them that extra punch on certain notes. It's like accenting certain notes with different channels, which is a cool trick. So yeah, you can just like, you know, instead of being like, how did Jimi Hendrix pull off those riffs? Like, we'll never know, dude. You can just be like, oh, that's how he did it. You could just look at it and see like, okay, that's that. That's like, okay, so let's go to E. Check out the sample. That's the sample he's using. You can go to the instrument editor. He's not doing much. He's just putting a little envelope on there so it's punchy. I mean, it's really, it's a very open source music, and it's very easy to see what's going on. So if you feel discouraged, find something that you like, look at it, see what they're doing, and then you can kind of see. Yeah. Yeah, so Super Nintendo uses samples, so it would just be a matter of trying to find what samples they were using for specific songs. The reason Super Nintendo still sounds chiptuney and not like electronic music, I guess, which is also really sample-oriented a lot of the time, is that they had size constraints. So, like, I don't know if any of these are using anything. We need to get out of here pretty soon, but so see, this waveform is like extraordinarily tiny, but since he loops it continues. So like what they would do is they'd have these really small samples and then just loop them in creative ways to make them sound like different instruments. So it's really, you can use any samples and kind of, if you're looping them in interesting ways and different ways, you can make it sound like Super Nintendo. Genesis uses a different synthesizer, like synthesis method. And so anything you make with an FM synthesizer that's a plain FM synthesizer, there's a lot with bells and whistles out there, but like a plain FM synthesizer, anything you'll make will sound similar to the Genesis because that's what it uses. But yeah, so Nintendo's really straightforward, and then everything after that's pretty complicated. But so like this song actually does remind me of like a Super Nintendo song because it is like, you can tell it's got more crazy samples. It's not just beeps and boops, but it's still pretty like chiptune-y. But yeah, so hopefully this whole thing's been recorded. So with that crazy effect. So I'll put this up on YouTube, I guess.